check! It's English O'Clock! Ang pag-aaral ng English upang madaling matutunan, bakit hindi natin simplihan? Halika! Manood at makinig sa English Teacher ni Juan! Kung bago ka pa lang sa channel na to, huwag kang matakot! I made learning English easy for you! Please like, comment, and subscribe! At pakishare mo na rin sa iba para marami pang mga Juan na gaya mo ang matuto. Kumusta kayo, Grade 7? Welcome to Quarter 2 of English 7 Matatag Curriculum. Sigurado akong excited na kayong matuto sa unang lesson natin. Tara na't magsimula na tayo. Our target learning competency for this video is analyze literary text as expressions of individual or communal values within a structural context. And the focus of our discussion is about the elements of prose, specifically short story. Before we begin, balikan muna natin sandali yung lesson natin sa previous quarter. I'll be showing you again the chart of the types of literature. As a review, these are the four genres or types of literature. We have drama, poetry, prose fiction, and prose non-fiction. Sa quarter 1, ang naging focus natin ay poetry. But for this quarter, our focus will shift to prose, specifically short stories. Prose and poetry are both major types of literature. Pero ano nga ba ang pagkakaiba nilang dalawa? In terms of definition, poetry emphasizes meter, rhyme, and structured verse, though free verse poetry lacks these conventions. Poetry is more concentrated and rhythmic than prose, while prose uses ordinary form of written or spoken language without a formal metrical structure. It follows grammatical rules and flows naturally like everyday speech. Examples of poetry are sonnets, haikus, free verse, ballads, limericks, and epics. For prose, we have novels, short stories, essays, articles, biographies, and letters. In terms of features, poetry focuses on the static qualities of language, using literary devices like metaphor, simile, and symbolism. Poetry tends to be more condensed and expressive, often leaving room for interpretation, while prose focuses on narrative, explanation, or exposition. Sentences and paragraphs are structured to present ideas clearly and logically. In terms of purpose, poetry is used to evoke emotions, convey deep ideas or themes, and provide artistic expression through word choice and structure, while prose is primarily used for storytelling, explanation, or sharing information in a direct and straightforward manner. Kung mapapansin nyo rin, prose has two distinct types, fiction and non-fiction. To differentiate the two, prose fiction is imaginary or invented stories written in prose. The events, characters, and settings are typically created by the author. Sa Tagalog, ito ay mga kwentong kathang-isip lamang. Examples of which are myths, fables, novels, at ito ang topic natin which is short story. While prose nonfiction refers to factual writing that deals with real events, people, and information presented in prose form. Sa Tagalog, ito ay mga sulatin na nakabase sa katotohanan o mga totoong impormasyon. At ito nga yung mga halimbawa: reports, journals, articles, essays, textbooks, and biographies. Going back to our topic, let me define what short story is. A short story is a brief, self-contained narrative written in prose. To describe it further, here are some of its defining characteristics. Length. Short stories are brief, typically ranging from 1,000 to 10,000 words, focusing on a compact narrative. Short stories, as the name implies, are much shorter as compared to novels, which typically ranges from 40,000 to 100,000 words. Next, in terms of plot complexity, short stories have a single plot. It usually revolves around one central conflict or event without multiple subplots, unlike novels, which can have multiple plots and subplots. Limited characters. Short stories often feature a small number of characters, concentrating on their development and role in the plot. Focused setting. The setting is typically limited to one or two locations, enhancing the story's focus and immediacy. Unity of effect. Every element, including dialogue, setting, and character action, works toward creating a single, unified emotional or thematic impact. Theme. Short stories often explore a single theme or message, giving readers a clear takeaway. Economy of language. Language is precise and efficient, with no room for unnecessary details, making every word contribute to the overall effect. Here are some of the most well-known Philippine short stories. Dead Stars by Paz Marquez Benitez. Considered the first modern Filipino short story in English, it explores themes of love, desire, and delusionment. The Mats by Francisco Arceliana. A poignant story about family and loss, focusing on a father who brings personalized sleeping mats for his children, including those who have passed away. Footnote to Youth by Jose Garcia Villa. This story addresses the consequences of early marriage and youth impulsiveness, with deep reflections on maturity and regret. The Summer Solstice by Nick Joaquin. A story set during the St. John's Day Festival. It delves into gender roles, tradition, and the conflict between colonial and native culture. My Father Goes to Court by Carlos Bulosan. A humorous and satirical take on poverty. This story deals with a poor family's joyful outlook on life despite their financial hardships. The Virgin by Kerima Polotan Tuvera. This story explores the internal conflict of a woman dealing with loneliness, societal expectations, and her suppressed desires. How My Brother Leon Brought Home a Wife by Manuel E. Arguilla. A rural story about a man's journey to introduce his city-born wife to his family, touching on cultural differences and acceptance. Now, let's proceed to discussing the elements of a short story. Let's start off with setting. The setting of a short story refers to the time and place in which the story's events occur. It includes not only the physical location, but also the cultural, social, and historical context that surrounds the narrative. In a short story, the setting is typically more focused and limited compared to a novel due to the shorter length. Here are the key aspects of setting in a short story. Place. The specific location where the story unfolds. Example is a village, city, home, or forest. Time. When the story takes place, which could be a specific time of day, season, year, or historical period. Social environment. The cultural, social, or political conditions that influence the characters, such as societal norms, traditions, or class dynamics. Atmosphere. The mood or tone created by the setting, which can impact how the reader perceives the story. Example, a gloomy, tense, or peaceful environment. Here are some examples for each key aspect of setting. Place. Example is In the Mats by Francisco Arceliana. The setting is primarily within a family home in a rural Filipino community. The story focuses on the family's home and their emotional response to the gifts of Mats, highlighting the significance of domestic space and family traditions. Time. Example is The Summer Solstice by Nick Joaquin. The story takes place during the early 20th century. specifically around the time of the St. John's Day festival. The historical period reflects the blend of colonial and local traditions, impacting the story's themes and characters. Social environment. Example is in My Father Goes to Court by Carlos Bulosan. The social environment reflects the harsh realities of poverty and class struggles in pre-World War II Philippines. The story portrays the economic disparities between the rich and the poor, influencing the characters' interactions and the story's conflict. Atmosphere. Example in Dead Stars by Paz Marquez Benitez. The atmosphere is one of quiet disillusionment and introspection. The setting of the story, which includes domestic and social spaces in early 20th century Manila, creates a mood of nostalgia and subtle melancholy as the protagonist reflects on his choices and lost opportunities. Now let's discuss about characters. A character is a person or sometimes even an animal who takes part in the action of a short story or other literary work. The character or characters are introduced in the exposition part of the plot. The series of events or the plot of the story shows every detail that the characters experience, which reveals the character's traits and development. Although the character is the product of the writer's imagination, the character represents a real person. We have two classifications of characters based on their roles and relationships within a story. Protagonist, the main or leading character of the story who makes key decisions that affect the plot of the story. Sa Tagalog, ito yung bida. Antagonist, the character who opposes or conflicts with the main character. Ito naman yung kontrabida. For example, in the story Darna, Darna is the protagonist or the bida, while Valentina is the antagonist or the kontrabida. We also have another classification of character used to describe different types of character development. They indicate how characters evolve or remain static throughout a story. Dynamic or round character. They are the characters in the story who change, accept changes, act, and view the changes as part of their role as human beings. They are often known as the hero or heroine. Since they undergo changes, they possess dynamic traits, and the changes they face depend on the situation. For example, in the fairy tale Cinderella, Cinderella is a dynamic character because she undergoes significant change and growth throughout the story. Initially, she is a mistreated and oppressed young woman, but as the narrative progresses, she transforms into a confident and self-assured individual who secures her own happiness and social elevation. Her experiences and actions, particularly the magical transformation and her behavior at the royal ball, reveal her inner strength and resilience, highlighting her development from a victim to a triumphant heroine. Flat or static characters. They are the characters that do not change. They remain static or stagnant throughout the story. As the story begins, the flat characters are static and stays as they are until the end of the story. They help bring out the best in the main characters or the protagonist. For example, the stepmother of Cinderella is an example of a flat character. Throughout the story, she consistently embodies the role of the antagonist, exhibiting traits such as cruelty, jealousy, and vanity. Her motivations and behaviors do not change. She remains a steadfast source of conflict and hardship for Cinderella. The stepmother's character serves to highlight the contrast between herself and Cinderella, reinforcing the story's moral and themes. There is a method used to analyze how authors reveal characters' personalities and traits without explicitly stating them, and this method is called steal. Still is often used as a method of indirect characterization. Here's how each element of still contributes to indirect characterization. S for speech. What the character says and how they express themselves. Their choice of words, tone, and manner of speaking reveal aspects of their personality and emotions. T for thoughts. Characters' internal thoughts and feelings. These give insight into their inner life and personal struggles, showing what they value or fear. E for effect on others toward the character. How other characters respond to or are affected by the character. This reflects how the character is perceived and their impact on those around them. A for actions. What the character does. Their actions and behaviors demonstrate their traits and motivations, often showing more about their personality than their words. And L for looks. The character's physical appearance and how they present themselves. This can indicate their social status, personality, or state of mind. Here are some graphic organizers used to analyze a character in the story. First is the exposition. It usually occurs at the beginning of a short story. Here, the characters are introduced. We also learn about the setting of the story. This section also presents other facts necessary to understanding the story. As mentioned, in the exposition part, the setting is revealed and the characters are introduced. Setting, in its simplest context, is the time and place where the story occurs. Here is a sample exposition. One sunny morning, Elisa, a 12-year-old girl, was sitting at their sofa watching TV, waiting for her mom to return home from the market. She was about to sip a glass of her favorite juice when she suddenly heard a knock on their door. In this example, the time is one sunny morning, and the place, although implied, is basically at the house. On the other hand, character is defined as the people or animals in the story. And in this example, the character is Elisa. It is common for a story to have two types of characters. The protagonist, or inner language, is the bida, and the antagonist, or what we call as the kontrabida. Now let's proceed to the second part of the plot diagram, the rising action. This part includes all the events that lead to the climax. It also presents some type of conflict. Conflict is the struggle between two forces in the story. It also provides interest, suspense, and tension. Let's review the common types of conflict, which I know you have already learned in the previous years. Man versus man. In the given example, that is Cardo Dalisay against Bungo, the character of Baron Geisler, in the action TV series, Ang Probinsyano. Man versus society. Who can forget the box office hit Korean film, Miracle in Cell Number 7, that featured a mentally challenged man who was wrongfully imprisoned for murder? Man versus self. The character of Tom Rodriguez in the 2013 GMA TV series, My Husband's Lover, battled against himself as he tried to conceal his real identity of being gay. Man versus nature. A type of conflict presented in the 1997 American disaster film Titanic, whereby a luxurious ship hit a North Atlantic iceberg, which caused many of its passengers to fight for their lives in order to survive. Man versus technology. So this picture is about an ordinary man fighting against Iron Man, a superhero created by advanced technology. Man versus supernatural. A conflict between a character and something that is not normal in some way. Supernatural elements include ghosts, omens, and superstitions. Let's proceed to the third part of the plot, which is the climax. It is considered to be the highest point. This is the turning point of the story. Usually, the main character comes face to face with a conflict. The main character will change in some way. In the climax, some questions will run into the minds of the reader. Will the character survive? What will happen when the main character and the killer meet? Will the husband and wife go in separate ways? And sort of things like that. Falling action is the fourth part of the plot. Here, the conflicts or the problems encountered by the main character are given solutions and starting to be resolved. The last part of the plot diagram is the resolution, where the story comes to a reasonable ending, or simply, it is the ending of the story. Theme. Theme refers to the central idea, message, or underlying meaning that the author wants to convey. It's the deeper insight about life, society, or human nature that emerges through the plot, characters, and setting. Themes are often universal, addressing topics like love, conflict, identity, or morality, and they offer the reader something to think about beyond the surface events of the story. An example of a theme in a Filipino short story is the impact of poverty on human dignity. In My Father Goes to Court by Carlos Bulosan, the theme explores the contrast between the rich and the poor, and how dignity and happiness are not solely tied to material wealth. The story humorously depicts a poor family being accused by a wealthy neighbor of stealing the scent of their food. Despite their poverty, the family's joyful spirit and sense of humor highlight that wealth is not the measure of one's worth or happiness. The theme touches on social class disparities, resilience, and the strength of family ties, which are common themes in Filipino literature.
So did you learn something today? Sure ako na hindi ka na nosebleed. If you want more of this video tutorial and learn English in a light speed, huwag kalimutang mag-subscribe at i-turn on ang notification button para updated ka sa mga bagong lessons. Ako ang teacher mo, ang English teacher ni Juan. Class dismissed!